everybody, I'm Kelm. Welcome to today's functional core training. Today I'll be taking you through 4 different exercises covering all key muscles of the core. And those muscles include the rectus abdominis, the transverse abdominis, the internal and external obliques, the quadratus lumborum and erector spinae of our back, as well as our glutes. Now each of those 4 exercises will include 2 modifications, both increasing in intensity. If you find one modification to be too challenging for you, don't hesitate to take a step back and perform the modification that best suits you and allows you to perform it with perfect technique. Now remember, performing an exercise with perfect technique allows our bodies to focalize on the correct muscles that each exercise intends us to use. Now with all that said, let's get right into the first exercise. Now for our first exercise, we'll be on both our hands and knees performing shoulder taps. To set this up, we'll have our hands directly under our shoulders, our knees directly under our hips, and from here, you want to contract at the abs, pulling that pelvis in to keep it in line with our head and spine. And from here, we want to equally distribute our weight into one of our hands, lifting our hand to our opposite shoulder, placing it back down, and performing the same movements with the opposite side. And to make this a little bit more difficult, you might want to hover your knees roughly an inch off the ground. Remember, same technique, nice slow controlled movements to prevent that rocking motion. And to make this a little bit harder, you might want to raise that leg with the opposite hand as we go, such like this. Remember, nice slow controlled movements on the way up as well as on the way down. Now once you're done with this, you're ready for exercise number 2. Now for our second exercise, we will be performing a side plank. To get into position, we will first pick a side, lay on that side, resting on our elbow and both of our bent knees. This is where we will begin and end every one of our repetitions. Now to lift ourselves up, we want to focus on the oblique that is facing the ground. From here, you will contract that oblique all the way until you get to the top, and then decontract until you're all the way back down. Now from at the top of each of our repetition, you want to give a forceful exhale to work our transversus abdominis as well as to get a little bit more out of our obliques. Now to make this a little bit more difficult, you might want to extend one of our legs all the way out and then performing the same exact movements. Now to make this a little bit more harder, more challenging, you might want to fully extend both of our legs. Again, keeping that forceful exhale at the end to work our transverses as well as getting a little bit more out of our obliques. Now once you've done all of those, you'll be ready for your third. For our third exercise, we will be performing a glute bridge. To get into position, we'll lay flat on our back, having our legs bent, creating roughly a 45-degree angle. From here, we're going to pull with our abs the front of our pelvis up in line with our spine. Now if we're doing this correctly, there will be no gap in between the mat and our back. Now from here, this is where we will begin and end every one of our repetitions. To lift ourselves up, we will contract at the glutes maximally until there's a straight line in between our spine as well as the back of our legs. To make this a little bit harder, you might want to increase the lever length of those legs, forming a slightly above 90-degree angle. It's important as we go through this not to overarch our back as we go up, since that will focalize muscles that we really don't want to be using with this exercise. Only the glutes are really the key muscles that go along with this exercise. Again, keeping that pelvis in line, flat back with the mat, contracting out the glutes maximally until we get that straight line with our legs and spine. Up, and then down. Now to make this a little bit more difficult, you might want to bring those legs back in to that 45-degree angle instead with one of our legs fully extended up. Again, flat back with the mat, contracting maximally at the glutes. Nice slow controlled movements. Once you're done with this, you'll be ready for our exercise. We will be performing a bird dog. To get into position, we will first be on our hands and knees, hands directly under our shoulders, and our knees directly under our hips. From here, you want to pull that pelvis towards your face, so your pelvis is in line with your spine, as well as keeping a slightly above horizontal gaze to keep that head in line with our spine and already in line pelvis. From here, you want to keep that body nice and steady, raising one of your arms overhead. As we go about this, we're not going to want to raise our ribs as we raise our hands, but instead contracting at those abs, keeping that pelvis in line, and slowly, controllably raising that arm. Now, to make this a little bit harder, we might want to raise that leg opposite to our hand. Right hand, left leg. Nice, slow, controlled movements with our pelvis in line with our body. Now, to make this a little bit harder, you want to get off of those knees onto our feet, and then keeping that opposite pattern like we were before. After concluding with our fourth exercise, this brings our functional core training today to an end. It's an also important side note to mention that with each of our modifications, these modifications aren't the only that we are able to perform with each exercise. Like, take the side plank, for example. Today we could have done fully extended with both legs, and then taking our opposite arm, threading the needle through the base of our body to get a nice rotationary transverse plane movement within our exercise. Now, after covering this, today we have covered all movements of the lumbar spine: flexion, extension, lateral flexion, lateral extension, as well as rotationary. I hope with all the exercises that we performed today, you were able to get your body up and moving today, feel more energized, and set yourself up for a good week. I'm glad you guys enjoyed us today. You have a good one.